Welcome back, Shop Rats. It's another Talk About It Tuesday, and I want to talk about putting one of those General Motors LS motors in one of my Mopars. You're not going to want to miss this one. Don't go away.
This is My Cars Shop.
Our good friend Duddy over at Duddy's Adventure had just done a video this last week at the LS drags, and of course, being a Mopar guy, he was on a mission to find as many Mopars as he could that had LS motors in them. There wasn't many, but he did find a couple. And of course, he came under a lot of heat and a lot of fire and a lot of flame for the whole thing. And so I thought, hey, what a great Talk About It Tuesday topic. So let's talk about putting an LS in one of our Mopars. What do you think? There are some advantages, contrary to what some people might think, is they can be pretty cheap. They're readily available. They're not terribly expensive to rebuild in comparison to an actual Mopar engine, and they're just a lot more plentiful. So it certainly makes some sense if you're going to be out on a weekly basis thrashing and trashing on a race car. And even for a street car, it's cheap horsepower. I mean, let's face it, 500 horsepower from Ford or Mopar or Chevy is 500 horsepower. It really doesn't matter. And 500 foot-pounds of torque is the same, even if it's from a Toyota. It's right about now in the video that I'm guessing heads are exploding. People are about ready to throw things through their screen or throw their phone if they're watching on a mobile or whatever. And let me just clarify one thing. I have no intention of putting an LS motor in one of my Mopars, but I thought it was a good talk about it subject because it's again one of those things where, around this place we tend to make purists' heads explode, and this is definitely a topic that will do it.
It might be the cause of Armageddon.
I'm not as big of a purist as a lot of people are, and you know that if you've been around the channel for a while, and I'm not against doing brand swaps if it makes some sense. You know, if you look at my 47 Ford Street Rod project, I mean, the name alone should tell you what era I was shooting for. Was definitely a 70s and 80s street rod that was small block Chevy swapped, even though I did go with a traditional drop tube axle. It's still got a Nova rear end and a turbo 350 transmission in it, and there was logical reasons why I did that. A lot of it was cost. It was a lot cheaper to build a small block Chevy than to put in a flathead or to put in a Ford V8 as well. So there was some practical reasons, but there was another big reason that made a lot of sense to me, and it just came down to dollars and cents. It was cheaper to build and install a small block Chevy in that Ford than to install any of the Ford motors, unless it was a flathead, and that was way, way, way out. But resale value is my point. It was worth more with a small block Chevy engine in it, and it cost a lot less to build. So the bottom line is, you got to think about it as a business and recognize the profitability of some of the stuff you're doing, especially in a car like that can be desired if I ever go to sell it. I am involved in several hot rod forums and several Ford forums, and one of the guys that runs one of the Ford pages I'm involved with has become a friend on social media and was very clear to tell me, hey, just show your car, I love it, but just kind of don't show the engine because you're going to get flamed by people in the group because it doesn't have a Ford motor in it. So that kind of legalism doesn't apply just to the Mopar community. I built that car. I actually had several engine options, and a small block Chevy wasn't actually one of them. I had a very nice little 260-some cubic inch Oldsmobile engine out of a Cutlass, that motor and transmission that was just sitting in my shop that I wasn't doing anything with. And of course I had a nice 318 engine with a nice little 904 transmission behind it that I also considered. But again, resale value is what made the determination on that project. Dollar for dollar, it's cheaper to build a Chevy motor than it is to build a Mopar or a Ford. Let me just look in the parts catalogs, and it has to do with just sheerly the mass amount of engines that have been produced. There have been bazillions of Chevrolet engines produced, much more so than the Mopar engines or the Ford engines. So it would make sense that in the aftermarket, parts availability would be a little bit cheaper just because they make so much more for those General Motors V8s. And that's true whether it's a traditional small block Chevy 350 or if it's an LS motor. I mean, they're plentiful. They're everywhere. They're kind of like dandelions.
They just pop up all over.
But I really do have to laugh because I do hear the words, "Oh, you're ruining the car if you put an LS in it."
Really?
As you've heard me say so many times on the channel, if you put it in, you can take it out. It isn't ruining the car. You're just upset because it's not what you like. And that's okay. I'm glad that people are passionate. But by the same token, in the bigger picture, I'm glad there are people that just keep doing this stuff any way that they can to make it a reality in their world, and they do what makes sense to them. That's what keeps the hobby going. Really, if you think about it, it's all about what you can do with what you have at your disposal. And of course, it's also about doing what you particularly like. I know this is hard for the Mopar guys to understand, but there are actually people in the world who like the Mopar body styling but hate the Mopar drivetrain. And well, again, it's not my preference and it's not the way that I would do things, but if they want to have an old classic Mopar and throw the power plant of their choice in it, that would be their choice, and I'm not going to knock them for it, although they're maybe going to have knocking problems if they're using brand X motor in their Mopar and they don't put the right amount of anti-rejection drugs in the oil and in the gas tank.
Anti-rejection drugs are important during transplants.
There's a guy that I know here locally, and he has a whole bunch of Mopar projects, and they're all big block swapped. And he's got a B1 drag car, and he's got all kind of stuff. He's got a lifted 4x4 truck that's got a supercharger, big block in it. I don't remember if that one has the 413 with the blower. I think so. But he's got a Corvette that he dropped in, a 440. And he said it went in so amazingly simple, it was quite frightening. And that's ironic because a lot of Mopar guys that I know look at that Vet and go, "Wow, man, that's really cool." But their heads explode if you see a GM motor in a Mopar. As you guys know, I'm not a purist, but I will say this. If something is well done, I can appreciate the craftsmanship and I can appreciate the engineering it takes to make that happen. And I've seen some LS swap projects and I go, that's well done. It really looks nice and quite frankly, almost looks factory sometimes. And there are other times I'll look at it and go, not the way I would have done it, but que sera, to each his own. Remember that the spirit of the true hot rodder is using what you have kicking around or what you can acquire cheaply and building something that you can enjoy. So if that's what somebody can do or that's what somebody enjoys doing, more power to them. It's okay. We don't have to like it, but we can enjoy it anyway. Well, that's my thoughts today for Talk About It. I can just imagine the comments are going to blow up on this one. All I'll ask is that you be kind and considerate, and consider that other people don't necessarily have the same opinion that you do. That's my opinion.
And it should be yours.
Thanks for watching. Oh, I almost forgot.
Rock!